Hello, my name is Carrie Brown and I'm with the Central Mississippi Regional Library System. Today I'm going to be reading to you Chapters 6, 7, and 8 of A to Z Mysteries, The Vampire's Vacation. Written by Ron Roy, illustrated by John Stephen Gurney, published by Random House, New York. Chapter 6. Josh called Pal and clipped the leash to his collar. "Mom, I'm going into town with Dink and Ruth Rose," he called toward the vegetable garden. His mom's face popped up. "Okay, but please don't stay long," she said. "I need you to watch the twins while I dash to the market later." "Are you wearing your garlic to see Officer Fallon?" Ruth Rose asked. Josh grinned. "Oops, I forgot." He laid the garlic crown on the picnic table. He broke off one garlic bulb and stuck it in his shirt pocket. "No vampire dude is getting me," Josh said. The kids cut through the elementary school grounds to reach Main Street. Then they took a ride on Oak Street and passed People's Pond on their way to the police station. Pal tugged Josh toward the pond. He took a few laps of pond water, scaring a frog. The frog plopped into the water and disappeared. They found Officer Fallon washing his cruiser behind the police station. He had removed his shoes and socks and rolled up his pant legs. "Hey, kids! Hey, Pal!" the police chief said. He dropped a sponge into a bucket, walked over to a bench, and sat down. "Have you come to help me wash my car?" The kids sat on the lawn near the bench. Pal crawled under the bench and sighed. "Your cruiser doesn't look very dirty," Ruth Rose observed. Officer Fallon grinned. "It doesn't really need washing," he admitted. "I just wanted to come out here and get my feet wet." He wiggled his toes in the grass. "Say, what's that smell?" Officer Fallon looked under the bench. "Has Pal been rolling in something?" "It's garlic," Josh said. He pulled the bulb out of his pocket. Officer Fallon raised his eyebrows. "What are you trying to do? Keep vampires away?" he joked. Dink nudged Josh's leg with his foot. "Tell him, Josh." Josh put the garlic bulb back in his pocket. "We saw this creepy-looking guy in town," he said, then began telling Officer Fallon the story. As he listened to the three kids, Officer Fallon leaned forward with his elbows on his knees. "Let me get this straight," he said. "This man in black went into Ellie's, but didn't come out again. And then you saw a Band-Aid on Ellie's neck?" "The same thing happened when he went into the book nook," Dink said. "The guy had vanished, and Mr. Paskey had a Band-Aid on his neck." "We found out he's staying at the Shangri-La," Josh went on. "And guess what? Mr. Linkletter had on a Band-Aid too." "The guy we saw signed into the hotel as Dr. A. Cula," Ruth Rose added. "And that spells Dracula!" Officer Fallon's eyebrows shot up. "Well, I'll be darned," he said. "That's why we think he's a vampire," Josh continued. Officer Fallon let one of his hands fall on Pal's head. He rubbed the dog's ears while he thought. "I think I saw the same fella in town," Officer Fallon said after a minute. "He looked familiar somehow." "I thought so too!" Ruth Rose cried. "I could swear I've seen his face before today." Officer Fallon stood up. He emptied his bucket and began hosing off his car. "Tell you what," he said. "I'll try to find this Dr. Cula and have a talk with him. Will you kids be around?" "I'll be at home," Ruth Rose said. "I promised to help my mom clean up the basement." "I have to babysit the twins," Josh said. He poked Dink. "And Dink is going to help me." "I am?" said Dink. Officer Fallon shut off the hose. "Okay, I'll let you know what I find out about your vampire," he said, winking at the kids. Dink and Josh walked Ruth Rose to her house on Woody Street. Ruth Rose's cat Tiger was laying on her front porch. Pal tugged on his leash and whined. "If you hear anything from Officer Fallon, let me know," Ruth Rose said, picking up her cat. "You too," Josh said. He patted the garlic bulb in his pocket. "Sure you don't want to borrow this?" "No thanks," Ruth Rose said. "Tiger here will protect me." She kissed her cat on the nose and opened her front door. Dink, Josh, and Pal headed up Farm Lane. They were at Josh's house a few minutes later, and Josh let Pal off his leash. The boys walked around to the back of the house and entered the kitchen. "Hi, Mrs. Pinto," Dink said. "Hello, Dink. Thanks for coming right back, Joshua," his mom said, grabbing her car keys. "The boys are waiting for you in the barn. They want to ride on Polly." "Cool," Josh said. He and Dink walked toward the garden. Josh pulled up a carrot and wiped the dirt off on his shorts. Inside the barn, Brian and Bradley were brushing Polly the pony. "Yay, you're here!" Brian yelled. "I want to ride Polly first." "No, me first," cried Bradley. "I'm a minute older than you." Josh fed Polly the carrot and rubbed her velvety nose. "You can both ride at the same time," he said. "But I get to ride in front," Brian said. "No, I'm oldest," said Bradley. "I get to ride in front." Josh looked at Dink. "Help me," he begged. Chapter 7. "How about if I flip a coin?" Dink asked. He pulled a quarter from his pocket. "Winner gets to choose who rides in front." "I'll take heads," Brian said. "So you can have tails," Dink told Bradley. He flipped the coin in the air and caught it. "It's tails." "Good. I ride in front," Bradley said. "I get to steer." "Riding in back is good too," Dink said to Brian. "You get to enjoy the ride but don't have to do any work." "Thanks, Dink," Josh said. He led Polly to an upside-down wooden box. Bradley climbed on the box, then Josh boosted him onto Polly's bare back. Dink helped Brian up behind his twin brother. "Hold on to Bradley," Dink said. "Let's run fast!" Bradley yelled. "We're not running," Josh said. "We'll take a nice walk down to the river and back. Don't fall off, you monkeys." "We're not monkeys," yelled Bradley. "We're cowboys." Holding Polly's lead, Josh walked her into the meadow behind the barn. Dink walked next to the pony, making sure the boys didn't lose their seats. Polly clopped along, dipping her head to munch the tops of weeds. Soon they crossed River Road and stopped on a grassy bank of the Indian River. "Can we go swimming?" Bradley asked as Polly dipped her muzzle into the water. "No, we're going back home as soon as Polly gets her drink," Josh said. He and Dink sat on the grass and watched Polly drink. "I wonder if Officer Fallon found out anything about Dr. Cula," Josh said, keeping his voice low so the twins wouldn't hear. The boys sat and thought about the strange man in black. "I've been thinking about those Band-Aids," Dink said. "What about them?" Josh asked. "They were all the same," Dink replied. "Why would 3 different people all have the exact same kind of round Band-Aid on their neck?" "That is weird," Josh said after a minute. "You think one person might choose a round one, but someone else would choose a regular strip, right?" "Right," Dink said. "We're thirsty," Bradley yelled from Polly's back. Josh stood up and gently pulled Polly's head away from the water. "Let's go home, girl," he said. Soon they were back at the barn. Dink helped Brian and Bradley off Polly's back, and the twins raced toward the house. "Let's go call Ruth Rose and see if she heard from Officer Fallon," Josh said as he let Polly into the corral. Dink and Josh walked across the yard to the kitchen door. The twins were standing in front of the open refrigerator fighting over a carton of apple juice. "Freeze!" Josh yelled. The boys turned to look at him. "Okay, now please hand me the juice, wash your hands, and sit," Josh said. The twins did as they were told, and Josh poured 4 glasses of juice. He got a box of cookies from a shelf and gave each boy one. Josh and Dink took their snacks over to the telephone on the hall table. The light on the answering machine was blinking. "Maybe it's a message from Officer Fallon," Josh said. He hit the play button, but instead of the police chief's voice, they heard Ruth Rose. She said, "Guys, I figured it out. Meet me at the Shangri-La." Josh looked at Dink. "Figured out what?" he asked. "Maybe she figured out who your mystery man is," Dink said. "Remember, she thought he looked familiar." "So why did she go to the hotel without us?" Josh asked. "She didn't know we'd be going to the river," Dink said. "Well, let's go meet her," Josh said, heading for the kitchen, "before the vampire gets her." Dink shook his head. "We can't leave your brothers alone," he said. The twins had finished their juice and cookies. Josh looked out the window over the sink. "Come on, Mom," he said. "Can we go out and play?" Bradley asked. "After you put your glasses in the sink," Josh told the twins. Just then, Josh's mom pulled into the backyard and parked the car. Josh waved to her as Brian and Bradley shot out the back door. "What did you bring us?" they yelled at their mother. "Come on, out the front," Josh whispered to Dink. He and Dink left by the front door and headed for Main Street. They cut through the high school grounds, then waved to Howard in his barbershop when they reached Main. As they passed the book nook, Dink noticed the shade was pulled down. A closed sign was stuck in the window. "Huh," Josh said, nodding toward the sign. "Mr. Paskey never closes in the middle of the afternoon." Dink remembered that little round Band-Aid on Mr. Paskey's neck. Then he shook his head. No, he thought. There are no vampires in Greenlawn. Chapter 8. A few minutes later, Dink and Josh walked into the lobby of the Shangri-La Hotel. Mr. Linklater was standing behind his counter, staring at the door. "Hi, Mr. Linklater," Josh said. "Ruth Rose said to meet her here. Have you seen her?" Mr. Linklater nodded. "Yes, I saw her about 20 minutes ago with Dr. Kula." Dink's eyes went to the little round Band-Aid on Mr. Linklater's neck. "Do you know where they went?" he asked. "No, I didn't notice," Mr. Linklater said. "They sat and talked here in the lobby. When I looked up again, they had disappeared." Dink remembered how the mysterious man in black disappeared from Ellie's Diner and the Book Nook. "Of course," Mr. Linklater went on, "Dr. Kula could be up in his room. He likes to nap during the day." Josh snuck a glance at Dink. Can you tell us which room he has?" Josh asked. "That would be room 202, he said. "Feel free to go up and check." Dink grabbed Josh by the arm and tugged him toward the elevators. Dink pushed the up button, and the boys waited. Seconds later, one of the two elevators arrived with a ping. Dink and Josh stepped inside. "Did you see that?" Dink asked. "Mr. Linklater didn't even check his register. How did he know which room Dr. Kula had?" "Yeah, and he never gives out room numbers," Josh said. "He always says guests at the Shangri-La pay for privacy." "And did you notice how nervous he looked?" Dink said. Josh nodded. His mustache was practically doing a dance on his lip. The elevator pinged and the door slid open. Dink and Josh stepped into the long corridor and stood, listening. No one was in the hallway, and it was very quiet. The small wall lights cast a dim glow on the carpet. "This is creeping me out," Josh whispered. "What if that guy's in his room, just waiting for us?" "Right now we have to find Ruth Rose," Dink said. He pointed to room 202. "Let's go." They tiptoed toward the door. Dink got ready to knock, then noticed that the door was already partly open. He raised his eyebrows at Josh, who was staring back at him. Dink pushed the door open a few more inches. "Dr. Kula?" he called through the crack. "Anyone here?" No answer came. Josh nudged the door fully open with the toe of his sneaker. There was no one in the room. The boys saw a TV set, a desk, an armchair, and night tables with lamps on both sides of a neatly made bed. "It looks like no one is staying here," Dink said. "Mr. Linklater did say room 202, right?" Josh nodded. The boys tiptoed into the room for a better look. Dink felt goosebumps marching up his arms and legs. Then he noticed a loud hum. "The air conditioner is blasting," he said to Josh with a shiver. "It's freezing," Josh answered. He walked across the room and stopped at the closet door. He looked at Dink. "Should I open it?" Dink nodded. Josh pulled the closet door open, then gasped. "What?" Dink said, hurrying over for a look. On the floor sat a black leather suitcase. Hanging above the suitcase on a hanger was a long black cape. "He disappeared again!" Josh whispered. "Let's get out of here," Dink said. "We have to find Ruth Rose." "Maybe she went back home," Josh suggested. "Maybe," Dink said as they walked toward the door. Against the wall to the right of the door was a small table they hadn't noticed when they entered the room. On it was a sheet of paper. A box of Band-Aids sat on top of the paper. Dink picked up the Band-Aid box. "The little round kind," he said, reading the words on the box. "Oh my gosh," Josh said, pointing to some writing on the paper. He picked up the paper. "It's a list of names," he said. He read the list out loud. Ellie Landolph, Ernest Paskey, Lionel Linklater, Ruth Rose Hathaway, Dink Duncan, Joshua Pinto. The names were written in purple. The first three names had purple check marks next to them. "The vampire checked off the names of the people he bit on the neck," Josh wailed. "And our names are next. I think I'm going to be sick." Dink studied the list. He was especially interested in the purple writing. Where had he seen that color before? Then Dink remembered. He brought the paper up to his nose and took a deep sniff. He smiled. "What do you smell?" Josh asked. Dink grinned at his friend. "Jelly beans," he said. Thank you. Be sure to tune in next week for chapters 9, 10, and 11. Goodbye.